Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, and welcome back to the continuing deep dive into the depths of Shadows of Brimstone. And today we are taking our last look at Hexcrawl, and we're going to, and the Ultimate Travel Hazard book. So today we're going to focus on the encounters. So for those longtime viewers of the Dungeon Dive, you will know that one thing I love in these kinds of games is having access to all kinds of random encounters. And this section of Hexcrawl is really where I get like the most joy from. Having the map, having the persistent towns and the mine tracker and all of that, that's all really great. I love all of that. But this is the section that I really like and that I think just really elevates the game. There's already so many encounters in Shadows of Brimstone with all the card encounters. And so then to just add all of these as well and the variety that you get, just, you know, it's like I will never, ever, ever see everything that is available in this game, especially when you combine all of the stuff with Hexcrawl. So what this section of the book does is it details all of your jobs boards, your terrain encounters, your wilderness encounters, and your wilderness encounter results. And so let's go through some of those and we can see what these are. So the jobs board we've already kind of gone over. Each town that you go to is going to have at one time, at any given time, it's going to have 3 different jobs available. As you complete jobs, then a new one will replace the old one that you have completed. And what jobs are little side quests. But of course, sometimes those little side quests can turn into or lead into other missions. That can happen within the job themselves, but it can also be just you as a storyteller, you as a creator of your campaign. You can also easily piggyback off of jobs to come up with new things for your heroes to do. And there are 100 different jobs available. Some of them in the dark, that are darkly shaded, are mandatory. And those, if you roll, they have to be taken. You have to take that, so you either will pass or you will fail that. But others are not. Some of them have time limits, so some of them you have to do in a certain amount of days. Some of them don't. Some of them will require you going to a mission. Some of them will require you going to a certain kind of terrain on the map and searching. And so as you are doing those jobs, and you can just kind of see how many there are here, there will be also what we know, the terrain encounters. So that's these here. Terrain encounters, as the name implies, each of the different types of terrain has their own set of different encounters. And so when those trigger is when you are out in the overworld doing your hex crawl and you explore. And depending on what exploration token you draw, well then you will turn to that section. So if you are on the desert terrain and you have an encounter, you would turn to page 36 in this book to see what kind of terrain encounter you have in the desert. And these are about the same as your travel hazards. Some of these, though, will be little skirmishes that you can have. Some of them are just little stories. Sometimes you will meet certain NPCs. And again, these are all really cool ways that you can use to help just kind of flesh out your story in your campaign. But we've got desert terrain encounters. We have terrain encounters for your forests. If you're on a mine, if you're in the mountains or the plains, the railroad, a river, road, in a swamp, in a town ruins. So that's cool. They make a difference between the town and the town ruins. Or if you draw the Growing Dread encounter, you will have an especially kind of heinous encounter to have to deal with. But these are all really cool, and I like how I like how they are separated into terrain, so that way you can kind of take thematic advantage of where your heroes are on the map. Things that would normally happen in the forest aren't going to happen in the town ruins, and I like that. That's really cool. And then finally, we have our wilderness encounters. And the wilderness encounters really do take the place of the travel hazards. So at the beginning of each day, the rule says that you're going to take a D8 and you're going to roll that. And if you roll a 1, you have a wilderness encounter. Well, if you don't think that happens enough, you could say on a 1 or a 2, or you could roll a D6 and take the 1. So it's up to you kind of how many you want to have, but the standard rules are either a 1 on a D6 or a D8. If you roll that, you will have a wilderness encounter. Now, these don't have anything to do with the terrain. These are just random encounters that you're going to have at the beginning of each day if you roll that 1. And you're going to roll a D100. Now, what's really cool is a lot of these do have choices. And so let's see this one here. This says, so number 3, give my love to Rose. This is an encounter. It's an active encounter with a stranger. The heroes come across a dying man with a small fortune who has asked them to deliver his money to his wife and kids. So now you can choose. Accept the dying man's task, go to 56A. Or pocket the gold, go to 48A. Okay, so now if you have a choice, so then you have to turn to the results to see what happens. So let's say you decided to take the man's gold to his wife, go to 56A. So let's find out what happens if we decide to be good people. 56A, accept the dying man's task. A random hero gains a bag of gold worth D6 times 100 gold, but must give this item up in the nearest town. So you have to go to the nearest town to deliver that money. As a reward for your honesty, you gain 50 XP, and you may stay for free at this town, as if at a hotel location, anytime you visit this town in the future. If you instead decide you want to keep the gold, you must roll a Spirit 6+ test. If failed, you take D6 corruption hits. So that's another way that you could use this book to help flesh out an NPC in a town. So you could take the dying man's money to the town and give it to his wife. Then you could create an NPC at that town for his wife. Maybe his wife works at the inn. Maybe she's the owner of the inn, and so that's why you get to stay for free. And then you could start going on quests or missions for her. So now let's see what happens if you decide to pocket the money. Go to 48A. All right, 40A, pocket the money. So you have to make a Spirit 5+ check. If failed, the hero takes D6 corruption hits, ignores willpower, and you gain D6 times 50 gold. So as you can see, there are a few choices that you get to make, and that is cool because most of the travel hazards in the normal book don't really have, or in the base game, don't have those kinds of choices. And quite a few of these do. There are lots of stat checks, so you will be encountering monsters and dangerous things, dangerous items, and having to make some choices in how you choose to face that encounter. So really just a lot of great stuff in Hexcrawl. Like I said, even though it's not themed for the Old West or for the Eastern set with Forbidden Fortress, I still play with it because I like it so much. For me, it gives me that, it's really easy to create a solo or co-op RPG style game using Hexcrawl, using your mind tracker, your town tracker, and your mind tracker, and just coming up with your own stories, making up your own NPCs, connecting the dots, and fleshing out the world in which you are playing. And this book here also does a lot to help that. And this is the newest of the like big fan expansions. This has been worked on for a couple years by a group on Facebook, and of course put together by Nuno de Sa. And this is the Ultimate Travel Hazard Old West Companion Book. Now this is version 0.9. Version 1 hasn't been released yet. What I'm really hoping that they do when version 1 comes out is they do put some layers on the PDF so we can print without the background, because the text is pretty small and the background does kind of get in the way of being able to read some of it, especially if you're like me and maybe have somewhat poor eyesight. I have a very hard time reading some of this without my glasses. But in this book, there are over 500, I believe, different travel hazards. So this is an entire book just full of travel hazards. And some of these are taken from Hexcrawl. Some of them are taken from other fan-made expansions. Some of them are written by the Nuno de Sa. And some of them will also reference travel hazards from the base game, in which you will have to go to that. You will have to have that. It doesn't reprint official stuff in this book, because that would be a copyright infringement. So for instance, Dark Dreams, this is a Frontier Town adventure, hazard number 13, located on page 19. So if you roll that number, you have to have that expansion to encounter it. If you don't have that expansion, you could just re-roll. And the way you roll in this is you would roll 3d8s. So you would have 6, 1, 1. All right, so let's see what would happen at 6, 1, 1 here on our travel hazard. 611, the Cold Bat Gang. So this was written by Nuno de Sa. You hear some voices nearby. A man stands on top of a horse with a rope tied to his neck, while a second rope ties his hands to his body. 8 men surround him. Looks like they're going to hang him. The man is immediately hanged and his neck broken. Nothing you could do. Just another episode in the Brimstone region. All heroes take D3 sanity damage. The gang members turn their attention on the posse and draw their guns. All heroes choose to perform an agility 6+ or strength 6+ test. Then it has 2 different things. If you fail, the hero is not able to avoid the bullets. Take D6 hits, D6 plus 2 hits for each 1 rolled. If you succeed, for each 6 rolled, one of the Cold Bat gang members dies and the hero that rolled that dice wins 10 XP. If no Cold Bat member dies, they continue to shoot and the posse must repeat the agility or strength checks. So as you can see, the writing is a little rough. You can't always expect that kind of stuff from fan-made expansions, because a lot of times the fans are not as good of writers as people who are actually writing a game for a living. The same is true about Hexcrawl. Some of the prose, some of the language used in Hexcrawl is a little rough. You know, it's not a professionally written book, especially when compared to the Frogs and their love for well-written thematic text. So just know going into that you're not going to get like super professional level writing, but it more than makes up for it just in the sheer number of options that this book adds to your game. I mean, you could play this for years and just always have different results, different combinations of encounters, especially when you start adding together all of the official and other fan stuff. So yeah, I hope you liked taking this look at 2 of these great fan expansions. Hexcrawl, just gets my award for the best fan-made expansion that I've ever played. For me, I will never play Shadows of Brimstone without it. Well, I guess that's not exactly true. Like, if I just want to play a quick game with some friends, yeah, I'll play without Hexcrawl. But if I'm really diving in, if I'm really ready to play a serious game of Shadows of Brimstone, it's going to be with Hexcrawl for sure. Just because I like fleshing out that world. I like creating NPCs. I like creating stories that connect the different towns and the mines, and just connecting the dots between the adventures that my posse is going on. All right, so we're gonna have 2 more videos in this series. The next video is going to be a quick video on some house rules, and then we're going to have the grand finale, which is just a closing video, some closing thoughts. Sorry guys, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.